Back, everyone, to another new episode of Grow Your Path to Wellness. Last week, our guest, Rekha, Amanda, I know we probably butcher this until I get to meet her, but Chaudhry, she needed to reschedule. She had a family event come up, so we rescheduled her for April 4th. So we will tune back in. We'll get her back up and going next week. So we took last Sunday off to recharge a bit. This week, we are excited to welcome Judith Mudd-Krijgelmans. She's going to speak from her lived experience on the topic of the trauma of growing up in the Jim Crow South. So we're both very excited, very privileged that you were going to give us some of your Sunday morning and come and join us. So thank you for being with us, Judith.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Judith, we so appreciate your time and energy, especially like Kelsi said on a Sunday. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Why this topic today?
Well, I'm Judith from Louisville, by way of a lot of different places. I've come back home. I'm a former Foreign Service officer, diplomat. And when I left the United States in the first time before I joined the Foreign Service, but after college in 1968, it was one of those years that was just an epoch-changing year, 68. And I thought I would never return to the U.S. again because things were falling apart, and I felt so disappointed and so hopeless. But and I went to live in India, and I lived there for 2 years, and various things happened. But I would never have been caught dead going to the American Embassy or hanging out with the American Embassy. So lo and behold, 7 years later, I end up back at the American Embassy. Never say never, doing my first tour. So basically, I've had 30 years in the Foreign Service, almost 30 years. And when I retired at the end of 2004, I really felt so full of my experiences, and yet so unfamiliar with the United States. Because even though I'd come back here and I had lived here for a year and a half, and the longest was 3 years before I left for my last post, I didn't really feel I was settled back here until I came back in late 2004. Pretty much it was 2005 because we traveled a lot after that. And that's when I realized, look, I'm going to have to put some of these thoughts down and make some sense of this. And of course, I procrastinated because you'll do everything but write a book. So I decided, I took Memoir course, and then the teachers kept saying, well, bye, we got to go make a real living. And I said, hey, I can teach this, I can lead. And I did. I led the Memoir class. And so I then, with others, we learned together, which I think is the best form of teaching, really. And then I started putting my thoughts down and getting my first book out in 2018. So basically, I thought the message I should give is, in contrast to now for people like me of color, what has changed, what hasn't. There's so much improvement. The contrast is overwhelming. But of course, if you're a young person today, that's just old people talking, But yet it is very important because you know what happens here with racial issues. We go forward and then we go backwards. We do that as a group, as African Americans do, but we do that as a nation. 1 minute everybody's on to kind of huggy, touchy-feely, Mm-hmm. You're my Black History speaker. And then, the next moment they're like, that's too much, or That, people don't want to hear that. And I get it. I understand. So I'm kind of here to present my story, which I feel was really an American dream come true story. A story about women, a story about all marginalized people. And in doing that, I had to do a lot of taking care of myself, what you call self-care now, or I would just be raving mad.
Judith and we truly appreciate you and what you're doing. And with both of us, I'm in late 20s, and, I don't have this, type of wisdom, these experiences, or really, access to that firsthand knowledge, based on just, I can be culturally aware all day long, but getting to sit and speak with you is very valuable. And I appreciate your, coming on here and sharing your story, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
So if we would jump into the first talking point you sent over to us, do you mind just kind of jumping in, sharing with us and our community your personal experience of what it felt like, and possibly still feels like, for sure, but versus, growing up in the Jim Crow South? What was that experience being a minority American?
Yes, and I have to tell you, it was, of course, what you don't know doesn't hurt you. I mean, ignorance can be bliss. But it's when you come out of that, you realize what you've missed, and the unhappiness begins. But as I explain in my memoir, my parents kept us in this ersatz American middle-class world as much as they could. And we were Catholics, which also made us even more a minority in the minorities. Because as I say, if you're going to be an African American growing up during Jim Crow in the South, it would have been better to have been Baptist. All the stereotypes we have are of the Baptists, the church-going, the Bible thumpers. I was a Catholic, and the Catholic religion is very different. But I will say, I do know, and this is not going to turn into a discussion of religion. I think religion is a personal matter. But I will say that I was fortunate. Well, I'll say two things. In those days, the church, at least in Louisville, and in Ohio and Indiana too, I know, the approach was more towards social justice, kind of based on the work of Dorothy Day during the Depression. The idea of helping, the idea of St. Francis of Assisi, the man with the birds. It was really that. Now I see the Catholic Church is split down the middle, just like American society is. But so even though we were in a segregated parish, of which there were only two when I was a child, and then there became a third one as I was almost ready to leave Louisville. It's so long ago. So many people in Louisville I meet don't even know that, which is good. But to be so segregated, to be so among a small community anyway, I think the number of Blacks in Louisville was something like never more than 18,000. And we were in the section of the city that is not where the up and coming people were going to be, the up and coming Blacks, which was the West End, where Muhammad Ali's from. Now, a lot of people should be familiar with that because now you see a lot of documentaries on Muhammad Ali. We called him Cassius Clay because that's how we knew him. And one of my uncles taught him. And but we grew up, I grew up in the other part of town, and it was very limiting. So it was church and school. It was going to the church run by the Franciscans with the Ursuline nuns. And it was their care and their attention, their commitment to excellence in learning. That to your mind, that was what it was. That made you feel like you were like everybody else. So it was a cocoon of safety, and my parents saved us. So when at about the age of 9, maybe 10, I discovered that Thomas Jefferson and those founding fathers, and we really didn't know anything about the founding fathers then. I mean, at least you all know more of George Washington as a person, but we just, well, they were like the saints, that we had in the church, in the plaster. And Thomas Jefferson, I was actually hurt when I found that he had slaves. I was hurt when I found that that didn't include us. I actually cried. I had a trauma that just made me feel just devastated. Now, my parents had kept a lot from us because they didn't want to scare us, and they were very progressive in their thinking in terms of taking advantage of everything. The future was going to be better. You get a good education and you'll do better. And they were very proud of themselves. But we were poor because the economy just doesn't work for poor people, no matter what color. And certainly for Blacks, because getting credit, buying a home, those kinds of things didn't come to us. And that's when I started understanding that we were really to be kind of in the shadows. And I always felt like from then on, we had to kind of keep our heads down and move in behind the lines. I was fortunate enough to go to an all-girls white academy, predominantly white, but they also had other Blacks. It was not the only Black. There were about 6 or maybe even, about 6 of us. And that was, of course, an eye-opener for me because then my friends, the girls in my high school mates were not Black. They were of European ancestry. And we were pretty much in this boat together, living under these women who were so dedicated to teaching and to excellence that, I mean, race was, for me, it didn't come into the equation until it came up in the headlines or something. I mean, and I went back to see these women at my reunion in 2014. I was afraid to do that because, they say you can never go back. And I was afraid I would find that they were not the way they were. They were, and even more so today. And there was real acceptance and love there because basically as girls, we were all in the same boat. We had to wear the same uniform with the corny tie. We didn't have any social things until the end of the year. On our senior prom, or on our graduation night, senior prom, of course, we had to be inspected by the nuns. If anyone had on too low-cut a dress, they were not allowed to come. Before senior graduation, we had to perform a get up on a step ladder so the nuns could check us to make sure we had on slips. Actually, they put ideas in my head. Because I was a poet. I just wanted to see Robert Browning's works and go to England. So basically, I grew up like that. So I didn't realize I was in any trauma, and I won't say that. And a lot of people say, oh, well, your book, your story, it's not, they wanted more. They want more kind of like dysfunction and that kind of thing. Well, I'm here to tell you, I don't think I was alone. I think most Black families tried to live like the Beavers on TV. We had cats, we had dogs, just like, the family, the typical American family. In fact, we learned how to live a lot from TV. And so I learned, though, when I was out on my own, after going to a historically Black college, Morgan in Baltimore, which was really good and really helped me. But it was all Black. And I learned, though, in the interim years, how different we were. And I realized how I checked myself. And this speaks to the trauma. I think I always had this kind of what I think was like a tick, where I would correct myself before. I was afraid. So, but when I wasn't afraid, it took a lot of courage. It took a lot of getting myself wound up to that and staying there. And looking back on it, I would call it trauma. I remember I went through one period, and I can't put my finger on the time part, and I'm sorry about that, because when I was writing the book, I said I was going to, but you're only remembering memories, and you're going back to what was recorded at the time or noted. And there was a time when I really did not, I was famous for speaking. I won my first speaking contest in the Catholic schools when I was 10. So I got the label of being the speaker. And so I always prided myself that I wasn't shy. I was on the debating team in high school and in college, and that kind of thing, very upfront. But there was a time when, in my early adult years, I really stopped speaking in public. I didn't go silent with personal relationships, but I didn't speak. And I was afraid to speak. And I think that came through the trauma. And it also came through the trauma of my dealings with the opposite sex. Because in this great fantasy land, this great Ursuline Academy, which was wonderful, we didn't really learn how to handle ourselves with young men. We just learned about the dangers of all these things, girls, don't do this. And I used to think, what are they talking about? I was really out of it. And so I looking back, I know that was just a lot of kind of fear of getting out, asking questions, looking at the practical, sides of things. So I was very fortunate. And even into my career, and I joined the Foreign Service when I was 29, almost 29, so about your ages. I was like very strident in my civil rights. It was, I'd come out of 68. I was from DC. But I had all these preconceived ideas of what white people thought, because I never really worked with them. I'd been with them in my Fulbright group, and I worked at Peace Corps as an intern one summer in Washington, and with them. But I never found I could have really too many open, honest conversations with them. And so that there's a downside of that too. Being someone who's on the outside, people are afraid to criticize you because they're afraid you're going to take it the wrong way. But if they know you, then you can accept the criticism that you need, especially as a young person, from them, and you will make changes. So when I got into the Foreign Service, the people who really helped me, trained me, were the people who provided valuable feedback and, corrected me and just kind of took me aside and said, hey, you got this chip on your shoulder. And one guy told me, because I used to use the word contention because I'd been a debater. My contention is my contention. Well, it worked a lot when you were talking about a problem. But when you were just talking about a social thing, a societal thing, it was out of place. And he told me. And it really, really helped, So anyway, that is the kind of trauma I think I suffered from. And I think probably a lot of women coming out of my circumstance, and men do. We tend to censor ourselves. We tend to keep ourselves in the back, that kind of thing. And, we're not allowed to just kind of do ordinary things. It's got to be great if Judith's answering a question. Well, maybe not. Maybe I just have this ordinary curiosity. And I ask what seems like a dumb question, and I am like that. I will ask to find out. And I have found that to be true in my whole professional life. I can't just be silent. If I'm silent, it's assumed I'm just kind of like a dummy. I mean, I have been mistaken for the cleaning woman several situations, or a service person. Once in Boston, when I was bringing my daughter back from college after we were shopping, and the taxi driver said, you want the back door. And I was ready to like blow up. And my daughter said, Mom, that's a Boston type comment, just, that kind of treatment. And so I think we, as I began to listen and observe and talk to people, I found out that was just a standard treatment. So I use it in that sense. But the real point I wanted to make about the trauma is that when I discovered I was not a part of we the people, I mean, I was ready to argue it. I mean, I didn't take it lightly. That could not be right. Not me. And I couldn't find the answer, and I did something to help. I went out and bought a picture of George Washington and took it home and put it in the dining room. I know my mother was really patient. I thought that settles the matter, But what I did was I had to get on and move on with my life, and I'm like that. But I think for a lot of people, they never do, especially kids nowadays. So I compare that to what's happening now with what is incorrectly called critical race theory, but which is about teaching in schools, and this ridiculous conversation going on about people not wanting their children to be hurt and traumatized because they hear about these bad things. And I think, well, what about me when I was a little girl and I heard about these bad things? And what about these kids nowadays who know these bad things are happening or feel these bad things? You think about the woman who was killed in her apartment in Louisville, and I'm thinking, gee, what do you feel if you're a independent Black woman in Louisville in your own apartment? Like my sisters have been. What do you feel? You still feel traumatized. You've got a plan B and a plan C. And so we have to look at it from the point of view of being further educated. If your child knows about things from the level of a child, it's like if your child wants to know about where a baby comes from, you don't give them all the A to Z of producing a child, although some people do. They just want to know, I came from you, mommy carried me in her stomach or something like that. Well, they just need to know this, because usually in their child's wonder, they can make room for it, and they'll know the cue is for them is that's not good. But my parents, they have friends of other colors or other types, and they're nice. They make their own conclusions. And so this is a part, I think, of young children growing up. They do have to experience feeling bad. You would know, but that's my take on that.
I'm just here for. I'm like almost forgot I was in a podcast. I was like, wait, I just want to sit and have a conversation and drink coffee with you all day.
Oh, hey.
Something that was resonating with me in what you just said. Sorry, let me gather it into a meaningful thought. So I think often, so I'm a first-time parent. I'm in my early 30s. I'm a little older than Kels, and he's 7 months now. And so, as you talk about how these parents, kind of hide their kids and shield them from these things, and they don't want them to know these things, I think it maybe comes from a place of wanting to protect them. Mm-hmm. But it does the opposite, because if you don't empower them with that information, they end up being traumatized or hurt anyways, right? So I often think of an example of in schools, sex ed is just don't do it. And if you do, here's how to put a condom on a banana, as if nobody's ever, and don't do it until you're married, right? Mm-hmm. So then people get into those situations and they have no tools, no information, right? They haven't been equipped with anything. And now that ends up being traumatic for them or overwhelming, because they don't know how to communicate with their partner. They don't know how to have consent or set boundaries or any of those things, right? And so I think that's true with with anything. If we want to shield our kids from things, that's not how we have to be able to feel. And I'm sure Kelsi, and you said this too, like the world just wants us to be happy all the time, and feeling sadness or the grief you must have experienced when you realized, oh, my reality isn't what I thought it was. The world isn't what I thought it was, right? Like we have to be taught how to move through those.
Exactly. But we also have to be taught that how to accept what it is and enjoy what we're going through. And I will admit, and I've had a lot of great, unique experiences, but I probably stressed out in a lot of them, in the beginning ones, too much, that I didn't enjoy them as much as that I could have. I think of someone like Kamala Harris, first vice president, woman of color, Asian and African American. And I think, wow, she should be enjoying this. When I heard she was, they were looking for housing, she was having problems, well, she's having staff problems. Of course she's going to have problems. Black women of color will always have problems against the authorities in Washington. I learned that as my career progressed. But she should be allowed to, I hope she could enjoy that. I think maybe with her partner she could. But, I'm hoping so, because that's just wonderful. It's wonderful for everybody. It's wonderful for a human being. So I had to find this place within myself, which I talk about, the courage to walk alone, walking through the fire, to do it and enjoy it on my terms, and be proud of it, take it in for me, because life is just too short. I learned that very, very early.
And I wanted, so the word that you said that somebody kind of took you aside and brought to your attention, the contention, right? I feel like in our society, we get caught up on the contention of whether it's racial issues or, interacting and building relationships with people that are not like us. I feel like it's much focused on the contention rather than enjoying that and exploring those types of differences. And so that's the word, it came right back in my brain whenever I love that reframe of you can experience this, allow yourself to experience it, be proud of your experience and enjoy the experience. Exactly.
And I realize this is only in the last 8 years since my high school reunion. My best friend, who thought I was deceased. Can you imagine going back to your 50-year reunion, your 50th reunion, and that person can hardly relate to you because she thinks she's been mourning your death for 25 years. I know.
You're probably scared her walking through the door.
Yeah, I did.
To Judith.
I traumatized her. She had, but we're close now, and she's well, and I've been in her homes many times, and she's just as lovely as ever. But what I remember most was when I was a debater in those early days in high school. We all wanted to be on the debating team. Not the least reason of which was we had this really great coach who was really good looking. And we didn't see men in our school very often. So we joined the debating team. And I took the topic that year was healthcare. Whether the U.S. resolved, the U.S. should have a national healthcare program. This is during Lyndon Johnson's time. And I took the negative because, the image of Black women are supposed to be angry Black women, and that anger gets us places. That's why we're chosen to be the judges, because it's kind of like they're used to it. They'll clean it up. Well, Black women don't like to go around being, regulators, get the act together. We want to take a little time, use our quiet voice. be pretty, attract men, but if you got to get things straight, I think tough women are like this in any case. But what I'm saying is, I knew that was going to work for me because we debated with all these white schools in the area. And so I took the negative, which was much easier because everybody in America was against healthcare. And also, I realized later on, I don't know if I would have been able to defend the rights for poor people because I was a poor person. And the people who were more affected by it were poor people. So when we met 8 years ago, Linda reminded me she had taken the affirmative. And, I've thought about that and how it's come full circle now. And of course, I'm on the affirmative. But in many ways, these divisions hold us back so dearly. We don't have the luxury, this great society that we have, even though we have a lot of issues. And I have, you were saying Jim Crow, how it feels to be traumatized. I don't feel traumatized anymore. I got over that through my self-care. I started accepting myself as an individual, being in a job that I really loved, that I could do, where I could mix with the people. I learned that there were so many other cultures, other people, other languages. There's Judith, me, there's Judith, a lot of aspects, of facets of me. I'm just not here, thinking about racial issues and although my family would say different. It's because I'm in retirement now and I can do it. But what I want to say is, I think that for this country, we've moved so much further. We do have the expectation of rights within different groups, your groups. My grandson, who's African American, he expects to be treated a certain way. When he's not, he's terribly sad, but he's coming to understand. My daughter, who is actually international, because her father was Indian, and her grandmother was, on her father's side, was Scottish. So she really has these different nationalities, and she relates on both sides. And so what I'm trying to say is, we have to give ourselves credit for this, because if we look at what's happening right across the pond in this beautiful new free country right now, we'll see that the divisions go back very far. And had those divisions been dealt with a bit better, people would not have stayed in their blocks, And I hate to sound like a broken record, but I see it repeated many, many times in other countries. We're protected because of our geographical situation. If we had people of different groups, like in Canada, they don't want us. We've had that war, but we're very much alike. So we're very fortunate, we're very lucky like that. But we fought a civil war, and we've learned to stay together, and we should stay together. I want to make one more point, and that is, and please, I hope I make it correctly, the appeal of not going forward and of staying in our places appeals to people of what is commonly called the right, and this includes Black people too, increasingly. And I need to say, Black people have the most to lose always if this country is having problems, because we're poor and we're still trying to get there. We don't have as much wealth, I mean, it's good that I can be mistaken for the cleaning woman, because I could go out there and take a rag and say I'll clean your house, and I wouldn't be as questioned as much, just as someone, until they would see what a lousy job I'm doing, and they'd say, hey, But no, I'm serious, because so what I'm saying is, in many ways we're kind of ready on both sides, but we know what it is to survive and to have a home and a place, and it's not Africa. That's another book, another story. But we have a lot to lose. And of course, it's being exploited and used here too. So I wanted to say that in terms of today's world, that's a part of being other in this society. If you're not a part of all that, and you're just, I just paid my taxes last week, and tonight we have to, well, we already have separate the garbage for recycling, and we're just kind of like ordinary people trying to lead a decent life, and well, we don't even characterize our life. We just carry on. My neighbors on both sides are not African American, and my neighbor on this side just gave me wood to help with my yard out front, and I've put some things over on their side. We want to get along. And for us, though, as a country, we should see this as very important, as something that really is important in the world. It's the only one really unique thing that we are exporting. We have exported. Okay, I could go on like this for an hour or so.
We easily could sit here for an hour, honestly. Thank you so much for, again, your time, your lived experience, your wisdom. And yeah, as you were talking at the very end there, I was thinking, European American white people, we are becoming very quickly, I can't remember the year it was projected, but we're basically the minority at this point. There is no, you can't keep fighting this, right? No. Eventually you're going to have to come around to getting to know different people and embracing that and finding your things you have in common and appreciating the differences and learning. And yeah, there's so much that could be said, Judith. Oh.
Yes.
We appreciate you again. We always ask if there's anything that you'd like to leave our audience with today, whether that's, an affirmation or a resource you have or information about your memoir.
Yes, I do. First, for the affirmation, I would say that we just need to remember there are more things that we have in common than are different. When you meet someone you don't know and you think, oh, they're so different, strive to find what is common between you, and you will find it, and it will help you to connect with that person's situation. And I've talked about things that I've talked about in this interview, which I really have loved. Thank you so much. Is in my book, Flowers for Brother Mudd. Brother Mudd was my father, and I've dedicated my memoir to him. It's a coming-of-age memoir. It's on Ex Libris, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the major websites. It's an ebook. And so I hope you'll take it, or buy it, or take it down. Thank you.
I love that. And then do you have a website or anything, or just them to get your book?
Yes, judithstory.com. That's just Judith and then story written together.com. And if you go on my website, you'll find some tips for writing your memoir, because I do teach memoir, lead memoir writing groups still. And I enjoy that very much. It's wonderful to hear about other people's lives. So go to judithstory.com and take down the tips.
I love that you were like, I'm going to attend this memoir class, and then you ended up teaching it, and then it came full circle, and now you just, that's amazing. I love that little nugget that you left. I'm absolutely going to go find that, because again, it so resonated with me when you said, you'll find everything to do other than write a book. Well, we will link your book and your website in our show notes for people that want to listen on our audio version. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those other streaming platforms. And then the video version is on YouTube. So we'll link the show notes there. Thank you again, Judith, for being here. And we'd love to have you back anytime. If there's more to your story, another angle, another book you'd like to share, we always would welcome you to come back.
Oh, thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Kelsi. I've enjoyed it tremendously.
Wonderful.
No, we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
And for our audience, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you hit the little alarm or notifications wherever you're listening to make sure you get updated on our next episode releases. Next week, so Kelsi was saying at the beginning, Reka, again, we haven't been able to meet her, pronounce her name, is coming back, but actually we're going to have Gina Goodson right in between there. Yep, and I think she's going to be talking about the benefits of therapeutic massage. So looking forward to that. Thank you, everyone, and tune in next week. We will see you all. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Stay well.